for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much, Dr. Fall. I think I'm the only thing between you and the end of the evening.
I'm enjoying this.
Really appreciate you coming out. I have the good fortune to have a district that just to my west is Fermilab and just to my south is Argonne, and have had the pleasure of touring both and meeting with a lot of your scientists multiple times. And I appreciate having the opportunity to nerd out so close to home. So I appreciate that. I want to talk specifically about climate change and what we're doing for it, which is, in many cases, a deployment problem. We underdeploy lots of proven technologies. But there's a hugely significant role that the national labs play. And in particular, there's some really interesting work going on at Argonne around energy storage. And I've been involved in the Promoting Grid Storage Act to increase funding, and I don't know if it's sufficient, frankly. But at core, we have more than enough clean, zero-cost energy to run the country, but it isn't where the loads are, and it's not always running at the time that the loads are there. And either we need to figure out how to build a lot more transmission than we've figured out politically how to build, or how to deploy a whole lot of storage around the grid at a cost level that's an efficiency level that's much higher. So could you, I think we gave you a $420 million increase in your budget last year, which I look forward to hearing how you're going to use, but tell me, if you would, where you see the gaps in energy storage and, if you'd like, transmission from a science perspective, what we are doing and what we should be doing more of to try to bridge those gaps.
Well, thank you for the question. Someone was asking earlier about cybersecurity for the grid and the intersection of AI with the grid. I would say there's also what hasn't been mentioned here today is the opportunity that automating the grid provides for squeezing more out of it. So, using AI, using internet-enabled, using, computational technology to understand energy flow on the grid lets us do more with less generation, for example. But that said, this is why the advanced storage, we talked a little bit, earlier about the energy storage grand challenge. I think that we feel in the department that we're on a great track and moving rapidly, mainly due to market forces, frankly, on the deployment of renewables. We're also, but the Achilles heel for more renewables, you reach a point, you have to have storage. You've got to have the load, available, as you said, reliable. Electricity is really important, and so this storage is the most important piece, and that's, I would say, of all of this, of storage and renewables and so forth, something we do in the Office of Science in terms of materials science, something that ARPA-E does a lot more of, something that EERE, Energy Efficiency Renewable Energy, does a lot more of in terms of closer in technologies. I don't know if I've happy to go back and forth here. I think I
I'd love to continue the conversation. I mean, I don't. It's not meant to be. There's no right answer to the question. I just know that if we're going to get to 100% renewability, we got to solve that storage problem.
Storage problem, exactly.
Both in terms of the technology and the deployment.
Right.
With the time I got left, I want to talk about the science of climate change. It strikes me that we have two significant gaps. There's one gap that we talk about ad infinitum, which is true, that climate models are uncertain and they get tighter and tighter, and there's better and better computational power, and I've never met a scientist who didn't want a bigger computer. And so that's fine. As against that, we have really limited tools to understand what the impact is of the policies. So, we had, hearings this morning that, one of our witnesses was talking about changes in agricultural policy, trying to get a good understanding of, okay, if we want to get to this goal of parts per million in the atmosphere, how much can this agricultural policy change on a permanent basis accomplish? These are scientific questions. So you can take either or both, but what do you think we could be doing better, both to have better predictive models of what is going to happen under various scenarios, and on the other side, better models to understand for a given policy change or behavioral change, what's the impact going forward? Because that's going to affect the amount of flow into the system. Right.
Well, I'll pass on a second because that's not my area of expertise, and I'll maybe talk about the computational side. We've made a big deal today about these exascale computers. I talked a little bit about the software stack that goes into that, and one of the things we are doing under the BER division is completely rebuilding these Earth systems models. At the end of the day, it turns out that size matters, and what do I mean by that? The scale at which you do these computations, actually, you have to go small. You have to use an exascale supercomputer in order to capture the nuances in these Earth system models, and so that's what we're buying with these exascale machines. Exactly what you said, better precision on the computation, and it's not just a wish list for science. You have to do that in order to be able to predict the weather. You know, the better you do, the smaller spatial and temporal scale you compute on for these predictions, the longer your prediction is valid. That's for weather, that's for Earth systems, that's for all of these things. And so I think we're moving in a great direction. This is a huge effort in this division of ours to fundamentally, from the ground up, rebuild with the interagency. It's not just the Department of Energy, it's working with NOAA and these other agencies who have a dog in this fight to rebuild the Earth systems modeling.
Thank
I don't
you.
know if that's helpful.
Thank you. I yield back.